Welcome to the Story Takes Responsibility podcast, a show for companies, marketing teams, and founders looking to improve their storytelling through video, make the process easier, and feel more confident walking into their marketing plans. Our mission is to add value through our decade-plus experience in making video production more than just videos, but videos with objectives and partnerships with brands that value consistency. Our hope is that this podcast makes you more sustainable and budget-conscious in your marketing efforts. This show will inspire ideas and value, but most importantly, we want you to take action towards better storytelling.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Ross and Josh here from Mylan. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about, well, a pretty big subject, something that's on the top of a lot of people's minds whenever they're coming to people like us, and that is how to get past that high cost of video production, because everybody looks at it and they pretty much go straight to the price tag all the time. That's where a lot of conversations begin from, right? Is, hey, I want a project for X amount. I want this. I only have this. No lower, no higher, whatever it may be. But we're going to talk a little bit this episode about, why that's a hesitation, what the cost of investment really is, what really goes into a production, what doesn't go into production, how realistically a production is way more than just the price tag. But that price tag also exists for a reason, right? And let's maybe shift the focus from looking at it as a price tag into more of an actual investment of not just money, but also time and energy from all parties. So Josh, take it away. How can we get past the high cost of video?
Well, I think it comes down to, what I always say is it's that initial conversation. And I think it makes sense to consider a budget. A budget makes a lot of sense, and you get a lot of price shoppers. But I think when we start to think about what the video does, what the problem is that it solves, that's when we start to actually get past that cost to that investment point of view. So for me, it's helping our customers understand, what this investment does, what the value of the project is, and asking those right questions. I'll hammer it over and over and over of we got to ask the right questions. We got to really diagnose the project the right way in order to understand what we really need to do, whether this video is actually necessary. So a big thing for me is when we're trying to figure out what we're trying to do, what the real problem is, what's really brought them into our ecosystem, is helping them to understand how to utilize us to the best of our ability. We aren't the one-off project company. Do we do one-off projects? Absolutely, but it's usually just to test the water, to get comfortable with us. Once you're kind of in our ecosystem and you're working with us over and over again, we raise the stakes. It's how do we produce multiple pieces of content? How do we make these dollars go a lot further? And it's not just there's a magic number on something. It's not hey, how much do you cost a day? Well, it's what are we really trying to make, and how do we make the most of that time? Results-only work environment is something that I'm obsessed with. I like to reward our workers. I like to reward our clients by being efficient, by planning really well, and that becomes a superpower. If you want to go to someone and just ask for a price, that's one thing, but have they asked the right questions around what's this video going to do? How are you going to use it? That's where you're going to start to kind of see where it's okay, there's value in this partnership versus there's value in this project. How does this project go further? How does our relationship actually take you a little bit further in working with us too? So what's the cost of a project? Well, what kind of relationship do you want to have? Have you already worked with 3 other, content producing studios and you haven't liked that fit? Maybe the more important thing to look at is what do I really look for in a relationship? Because we have all those things in mind too. When I look at our core values, it's we want curious, honest, and supportive partners, because we're going to be curious, honest, and supportive throughout the process. At the start of all this, it's understanding your project at hand. It's being curious, it's being learners, it's diving in and embracing that foundational piece of earning your relationship, which is building trust. It's building confidence. It's making sure we see eye to eye, we're aligned. And what happens is when we get further down the pipeline, if you have a bad idea or if I have a bad idea, we're able to be honest with each other. This works for our team, this works for our clients. And at the end of the day, it's trying to make that win-win together so that this cost is really a long-term investment for us and for you.
So in a lot of that, we talk about alignment and clarity on what the project is, what the task at hand needs to be, because it's not just, let's grab a camera, let's point it at something, let me pay you, you do the thing, and there we go, we call it a day. So let's talk about the importance of that alignment and clarity, knowing the intention, something we talk about all the time on the show, the intention and purpose of the project. I think, at least personally, a lot of the times figuring out that clarity point of your project, knowing why you're doing it, what's the purpose, what is the why, that a lot of the times can help clarify what that cost does or does not need to be.
Yeah. I like to clarify wants versus needs with projects. That's the very simplest way is like, is this a project that you're actually lusting towards? Or is it something that does have some practical, legs to it that can be of quality, that can be of value to your business and your marketing efforts? So for me, it's like have all the ideas in the world, but be willing to bounce them off and hear maybe this isn't the best way to kind of spend. That's what it looks like to kind of come into this partnership and to look beyond a cost. It's understanding like really what's the most valuable problem we have to solve? What's the strongest unfair advantage we have in our business? So, okay, if we're going to invest in a project, if you're already really doing well in one area, but we could supercharge that area to make your business even greater, the obvious return on investment, the best spend, is diving into that unfair advantage. Simultaneously, if we can kind of focus on that as the core, area of the campaign, but then we can have a supportive of like, here's a real weak point that we want to strengthen in our business. Okay, we're giving ourselves the upper hand by focusing on the cost of this campaign versus a one-off project. So practically, if we're talking about budget, as the video producer, a lot of what I'm trying to figure out is like, what stories do we kind of have to tell? What problems do we have to solve? And then I'm going to create a couple of options to invest rather than like it's one or nothing. It's all or nothing. So it's like, I'm going to give you 3 options. Let's talk through those options. Let's see what makes the most sense. I'm going to paint you, endless potential up here at the top. I'm going to do something in the middle. That's going to be our tried and true traditional. This is like, this is safety, maybe a layer beyond what you're asking for. And then here's a third option. That's a lower level of investment, but it's a starting point if you really just want to test out the relationship. And again, I'm not just looking for one-off projects. You're not just looking for one-off projects. We're looking for that partnership. And partnership means that we keep raising the stakes together so that it's safer to do it. I would so much rather us start small and safe and then graduate up to something bigger and bigger and bigger because we have proof that it's worked at this lower level. So we're just adding layers upon it and adding layers upon it. So when we're diving into this scary video production world where video costs a lot of money, let's ensure that we have a level of success. Let's have a guarantee. Let's make sure we're going to actually set things up for a win-win scenario.
So something in that process, obviously there's a lot of pre-production talks, there's a lot of meetings, all that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing that we're talking about is forming that trust, forming that foundation of let's go past just, do we need a video project done? And let's look into, hey, let's build a creative partnership. One way that we try to focus on doing that is through things we call workshops. It's sitting down with the client, actually digging into what is it that you really need? Let's look at this from a larger, grander scope past how does this one piece, how does it or does it not fit into the grander idea, the real goals, the real purpose that we're trying to build this towards? You go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead. You started to say something.
I kind of feel like with the workshop, it was our like no-brainer sort of, idea. For us, when we ran the wedding business, we literally did that with every single couple we worked with, is we'd run them through this process to make sure they were a good fit for us, to make sure we both were on the same page with the project that we were telling, and to make sure like, what is the story at hand? So when we were building this business, I'm like, why wouldn't we borrow from something that we've already seen the proof in? This creates confidence in our couples. This creates confidence in like our whole process and our workflow. And it makes a big impact on the final story. So when we're telling one video or multiple videos, it's really important that it's consistent. Through workshops, this is basically getting a preview of the pre-production. So if we're looking, using the house analogy, you could call it the blueprint, you could call it, the game plan, whatever you want to kind of refer to it as. The first step of that is like, let's walk through and let's discover your stories, your characters, and your actions. That's our 3 layers of storytelling formula that we kind of use. But then the fourth piece of that is putting that all together into a story map, into a plan that you can look at, that we can look at, and it creates a bunch of confidence. Now, we don't dive into this right away, but anytime we have a project that's over $10,000, we always advise going this route first. This is where the no-brainer kind of comes in. Sure, if you're doing one simple thing, one-off project, absolutely, let's just produce the project, let's test the waters, no big deal. But if we're raising the stakes and we're doing something bigger, whether you're a return client or a first client, you got a lot of things to do, a lot of things to tackle. The workshop's nice because not only are we just jumping into a production, but we're giving ourselves even more opportunity to build that trust, to see, do you really like us? Do we really like you? Also, here's the story at hand. So we're kind of productive on two fronts, on your storytelling and on identifying whether we're a good fit in general. So additionally, it's like, okay, if we're paying for this, this workshop as this one piece, one of the things that we like to do is like, we're a value-based company. So for me, it's like we offer a refund. If no one gets value out of this workshop, fully refundable, no big deal. Because if it's not getting value, it's probably because we're not a good fit. And the last thing I want to do is kind of take that away. Secondly, it's like, if you want to do this workshop and map out the plan, all the pieces of the content, because that's what this is good for. But maybe we want to break it up into like a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3. We can look at this holistically and we can kind of create a plan to tackle this. Or we can go immediately into the whole thing and create something that's more of working on like a month-to-month basis and tackling several pieces of content, batch producing this, and making the dollars go as far as possible. So for us, this model's become really a no-brainer for us, a no-brainer for our clients. And it just kind of makes sense when we're really going after something that's a lot bigger, that's like, let's just slow down. Let's focus on, paying for this workshop, walking through this together as a team. Because the other thing too is like, it'll often be like a CMO that comes to us that's like really excited about some creative idea. And they'll say, I can't get, the other people in the other departments to get on the same page. This workshop allows us to bring several departments in together, several people together, and get all of this input where we can kind of figure out the story holistically versus just like, I have this great idea and I can't get anyone on my team to sign off. This forces us to all slow down, sign off on the same idea, feel really good about the project going into pre-production, production, and post. And we all have clarity. The decision makers are present. We're excited about the project. I mean, when we're walking through this thing, there are so many things that I enjoy about it personally because I love relationships. I love deepening that a lot more. But I also think our clients get a lot out of it too that they didn't even realize that they get in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of those conversations lead to, oh, I never really thought about this project in that way. Or, oh, I didn't realize that was something we did or did not need. It's usually just like, hey, we know we need a video. We want it to be in this form, we think, because that's kind of all we're aware of. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but something like taking time to really dig into something like a workshop, it allows you to kind of dig into those things, ask those extra questions, maybe look down those different paths that you wouldn't be normally taking outside of just, oh, we think we need a story film because we heard the phrase story film one time. So yeah, let's have the owner talk about the thing and there we go. Well, let's workshop that a little bit. How does that feed into an overall branding or marketing campaign that you're trying to roll with? What can it be turned into? What's the multi-use that it can hit? Because then it's the classic phrase, more bang for your buck. I think even though it's kind of this weird double-edged sword that a lot of people lead with, is they look at trying to hire somebody for a video project and they're really, really looking at that price tag of, oh, this can't be too expensive. I don't want it to be that expensive. But at the same time, they're not even looking at the extra value that they can get out of that process and out of that video itself. So they're kind of simultaneously looking at this one-track mindset of, I need a video so I can post it so it does this, but man, that price tag is high. When if you take the time to really just dig into a meeting or sit down with people like us for an actual workshop and really work through all those ideas and those variables of what could come with that project, you'll find out that that old phrase, more bang for your buck, that's where that can pop up. You can find more reasons from just hearing even other people's viewpoints. I don't know how many times we've been in a meeting with somebody and they'll say, oh, we want this video for this reason, or we want to tell this story this way for this reason. And you or I or whoever chimes in and says, well, you could also use it for this. Or what if we did this? Or what if we added in this? And then we have this new avenue, this new approach. And they're like, oh, I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
And it's not that your idea is amazing or my idea is better or anything like that. That's just more so perspectives and different opinions. And I think something like a workshop allows for more of that like brainstorming session. And it's not just throwing ideas against the wall to see what sticks, but it's like, okay, we've got our guidelines that we are trying to create within. So we know how we're guiding this idea in this project. We know the lane that we're in. So now look at all the things that can bounce around within those guidelines. And there's probably going to be some things that pop up that we weren't thinking about before, which then in turn gives this project as a whole even a far greater purpose potentially than what it had to begin with, outside of just, we need to film a video. Well, now we're going to really dig into the purpose and intention as to why we need a video, but what more that video can do.
Well, another thing too is it introduces conflict, which seems really counterproductive, but at the same time is like when you bring all these departments and different people together who maybe aren't excited about doing this video project or photo project, and they're just like, why are we wasting our time doing this? Because marketing departments tend to get excited about this. And a lot of what they have to do is they have to sell to these other departments to see the value in what this is. When we're conducting this, we're kind of taking that weight off the CMO or off of the marketing team to be able to be like, hey, they're going to walk us through this. They're an outside viewpoint, and we're going to help you identify all these opportunities. So maybe it is, hey, we want to do a story brand film. Great place to start. But there's all these hidden areas of opportunity that when we can start to introduce the sales team into this conversation, they can say, well, the biggest problem I have, because this story brand film, isn't going to do what I need it to do. I could really value off of educational content to get people to have the conversation with me. Great. Now we've introduced that voice. We're unlocking that hidden opportunity. And this is where that map is like, sure, reach out to us. We want to do a story brand film. Great. I agree. It's beautiful. I love doing them. They're fantastic. But introducing these other voices and these other conversations, it builds a lot of alignment within our brand and our partners' teams. It makes it collaborative for us and them, and it builds confidence with everyone making this project together. And it uncovers these hidden areas that video can actually become a tool in your business by walking people through. I always say it's better to start off slow than to get moving fast. For me, if we start off slow and we ask the right questions, if we work through these processes together, we can actually look into the future a lot more clearly, a lot more confidently, and we can map out a plan that we can all work together and all sign off on together, and then we can speed up and work really quick.
So let's just strip everything down and let's break down, why is video expensive? Why can video get expensive? Because, we also take a lot of approaches of batching a lot of content together. Yep. So yes, we're not, doing one large, big, crazy video that's going to cost a ton. But at the same time, we can pitch and say, hey, let's batch a lot of this content together. Again, more bang for your buck. But someone can still sit and say, well, if we're doing it quicker, then why do I still need to pay that high cost? So let's just break it down. Why is video expensive? What all goes into it? Because it's not just pointing a camera.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you have different people in different departments doing different things. The word that I always land on that I try to help people see is like accuracy. If we're crewing something up really big, that's one thing. I don't do that unless we need it. It's understanding the story and the mechanisms to tell that story. So if I'm thinking about the day and how things lay out, efficiency is the name of the game first and foremost once we have the plan. So what team is required to execute on this idea and to meet the deliverables within the time frame that we have to do that? So that's where it informs me on like what size of crew do we need to do? How many days of time do we have to kind of do this? Like bringing them into the logistical side is like, is there a part of this that they have to gather, like their client testimonials or doing research or things like that? Where video becomes, not as much of a return on investment is when you're looking at it one piece of content at a time and you're viewing it as how expensive that piece of content is. Say you spend $10,000 on a story film. To some business owners, that could be super cheap. To other, that could be more than they could ever imagine to spend. How many pieces of content can we create out of that? And what opportunities does that open to look at the long-term investment? Imagine if producing that film opens up a whole slew of customers and then you're booking, 100 people that are $1,000. It's like there's $100,000. You've tenfolded your investment right there. So it's looking at what is the outcome and designing that for it to actually be a return on investment. We look at people, we look at gear. They're all tools and things to solve the problem. A big part of what we do is we try to figure out what budget feels healthy for you, what feels sustainable for you, and then let's kind of design a scalable project that meets those needs versus just line iteming you and being like, this video costs X amount of money. Absolutely, we have things productized in a way to kind of help make that process go a little smoother. But custom quoting and doing these more campaign focused, it's like that's where the workshop comes into play of like, how do we really make this as effective as possible versus, hey, we need a thing and we service the thing. I'm absolutely fine to open a door that way and to trust things. But where we really want to take partners is into batch producing, into that high volume producing. That can't just happen by accident. That can't just be a request. That's a conversation. That's planning things together. That's asking you questions, you giving us answers back, being vulnerable and open with us. That's where we start to save money, when we can go in and we can be like, we're going to shoot this story film. We're going to shoot testimonies. We're going to shoot frequently asked questions and all these things that support different objectives in your business for the next 6 months, year, 3 years, whatever the case may be. And then we can look at this from a holistic standpoint of how much budget do we have set aside to solve this problem, and what's the value of solving this problem, and what return can come from that long term.
I feel like batching content and batch production could be probably an entire episode on its own here on this show, which maybe we'll do at some point. But before we wrap things up, one final question that I would love to talk on is, what do you feel like the biggest almost confusion or just misleading of themselves do people often have when they're contacting us or anybody about video and the cost associated with it? What's the number one thing that always pops up? Is it not understanding their why and being confused to that means they don't see the investment purpose of it? Is it just thinking that it is grabbing a camera and grabbing some lights and getting it done in 10 minutes? They don't understand that, hey, this 60-second video actually might take 6 to 10 hours to capture. What's the disconnect there that you think people often lead with?
I think it's, if I really had to be honest, the partnership piece I feel like is the biggest hurdle all the time, is understanding what kind of partner do you really want. Do you want someone who's going to do it all for you? Do you want someone who's going to do it with you? Or do you want to DIY it? Most times we kind of land in the middle where it's done with you and we invite you into the process. The done for you method is fine as long as we already have a high degree of trust and we've kind of worked through this. So for me, it's understanding that partnership piece first, and then that helps us to uncover, what is the intention of this? How's this content going to be used? What is like your real budget, set aside? Like, that's always a scary conversation, and people are looking for either side. I'm not looking to get more money or less money. What I'm looking for is to hear what is sustainable in your marketing efforts, because I don't want to overspend you. If I overspend you, it's going to hurt. That's going to affect your business. I would rather us create something within the parameters that becomes effective for your marketing efforts.
Beautiful. Folks, the cost of video, it's not really going to go anywhere. It always has the potential of going up. But if you understand why you're doing it, why you need that project, or why maybe you don't need it to be as crazy as you think you do, that's how you can get around and get past that high dollar amount that's going to scare you when you go in. There's ways around it. And it all takes communication, clarity, alignment, all the things that we just said in this wonderful, wonderful episode. So, of course, check out our work at Mylan Creates around the internet, mylan.company, if you want to find more goodies or get in contact with us. I've been Ross. He's been Josh. This is another episode of the Mylan Podcast. And, of course, as always, remember that story, it takes responsibility.
Thanks for joining us on another episode. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend, rate and like, and all the things we're supposed to tell you to do. If you want more storytelling tips and perspectives from the Mylan team, please join our newsletter and visit the website at mylan.company. That's MYELIN.company. Additionally, if you need help in your video marketing or want to learn more about our method, please feel free to book a discovery call with our team or email josh@jcp.co. This podcast wouldn't be possible without all the great companies that trust us, challenge our way of thinking, and offer amazing feedback. We love to add value to other companies, leaders, and productions. Being a part of that journey is an honor. This has been the Mylan Video Production Podcast. Story takes responsibility. Until next time.